Hey friends, happy Sunday. We are back on our study of Genesis. And do you guys remember who we're talking about? Joseph, right, all right. Son number 11, held out his special. Jacob's son, he loved him so very much. And do you remember where we left him? My picture my little location should help you remember a little bit of where he was. You're right. He was thrown in the dungeon and he was locked in there for years. So it was like 2 more years after he'd answered the dreams of, do you guys remember the butler and the baker? We talked about those dreams, right? Okay, so 2 more years he was stuck in the dungeon. And there he was. And at the same time, Pharaoh is the big king of all of Egypt, right? He had some dreams, lots of dreams going through Genesis, right? So he had some dreams. And the dream was that there was big, fat, healthy-looking cows coming out of the river. There were 7 of them. And then there were 7 very sickly, starving-looking cows coming out of the water. Then he had another dream. A lot of times these come in twos, don't they? He had a dream that there was grain growing up, and it had 7 big, beautiful stalks coming off of it. And then there was a stalk coming up that was just sickly and deadly looking, right? All right, so what would these dreams mean? So Pharaoh, there was just commotion happening in the palace. What would these dreams mean? Finally, that chief butler, do you remember him? He said, I remember my faults today. I love how she says this in this children's Bible. Today I remember my faults. I was supposed to tell you, Pharaoh, about Joseph who answered my dreams, but I did for 2 years. I left him sitting in prison. So he says, he comes to him, he said, there was a man in the dungeon and he understood my dreams and what he said came true. And so Pharaoh was like, send for this man. So Joseph got all cleaned up and here's what happened. Joseph came before Pharaoh. I love this part. And he said, it is not me. God shall answer Pharaoh's dream and give the answer of peace. So right before the head of everything, the head of all Egypt, he says, it's not me, it's God. First off, he could have said, it's me. Do you think God would have blessed that? Maybe not so much. But he could have just gone before and said, I'll do what I can. But no, he made a statement. And he said, it is God. God is the one who answers dreams. What do you think you would do if you were ever brought before a king or a pharaoh or a president, somebody who's the biggest leader of a country, right? What would you say? Would you say, I can do all things through Christ? I can do all things because of God? That's what Joseph did. So you'll see as God keeps blessing him. So he said, it's not me, it's Pharaoh who can give the answer. And he said, there's 2 dreams, but they are 2 in 1. And the dreams mean, and here he's ready to tell him. He says, for 7 years, they're like those 7 big, hardy cows that came out. We'll have 7 years of great harvest, and we'll have all we can eat. But then, after that, there will be 7 years of starvation. It will be no harvest coming. Everything will die. And he said the same thing has happened with the grain. Those 2 dreams mean one thing. We need to store up our grain. We need to save it so that we can feed our people later. And so as he's talking to Pharaoh, he says, you need to put somebody very wise in charge of everything. And here's what Pharaoh says. I love this too. He said, where can we find another man as wise as Joseph is? For the very Spirit of God is with him. Yes. So even Pharaoh was listening and going, yeah, it's God who's with Joseph. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, because God has showed you all this, there is no one as wise as you are. So I shall appoint you as the ruler over all the land of Egypt. Whatever you decide will be done. Wow. All right, so here he is, Joseph. He's being lifted up again, lifting up as a leader. He's definitely moving out of jail. And he's going to be the leader. Now, Pharaoh gave him some other things too. He gave him a ring. And on the ring was the signature. It was like, have you guys ever stamped on, like in some wax? Like if you wrote a letter and then you put some wax and you put a seal on it? Well, that's what this ring was like. It was the seal of Pharaoh. And so anything Joseph said, he could seal it with that ring and it would happen. Those laws would be put in place. Those things would happen. They also gave Joseph a chariot. Do you guys remember what a chariot looks like? It's usually gold and it's big and it's led by a horse and he stands in the back and rides. Well, guess what happened? He's in this chariot. And it's the nicest chariot. The only one who has a finer chariot is Pharaoh himself. And as he's going down the street, guess what happens? The people of Egypt bow down to Joseph. Ding, ding, ding. Do you remember all those dreams? Okay. People bowing down to Joseph. And so they would go just as if the Pharaoh had gone by. Finally, Joseph was now 30 years old. And instead of being a Hebrew slave boy that was thrown into a pit, now he's like the prince of Egypt, right? He's got all the power and all the, he's dressed in beautiful clothing. He wears a beautiful headdress and he looks like a prince because that's the place he's been put to be. And said, God who planned Joseph's life and made all these wonderful things happen had a very special reason for his plan. God made it all happen. So exactly what Joseph said did happen, and there were 7 very strong years, and people harvested. But Joseph made sure that they saved enough. Now, remember, Joseph was taken from a land not too far away, right? So if there was no harvest in Egypt where the Nile River was, and there was, remember last week I told you how beautiful and lush it was with the water flowing through, right? What do you think was happening out in Canaan and the other lands around Egypt where Joseph's brothers were and where Joseph's father Jacob was? The same thing happened there too. So there was lands all around Egypt that were also needing food, but there was bread in Egypt because Joseph had made sure. Joseph had answered that dream that Pharaoh had, that God had put in place, and God had put Joseph in place. So next week we're going to learn what happens with all those other people that are in need now. What do we do when people are in need? Do we help people? It's a good week just to think about what can I do for somebody in need. And it's the best week to think about what plans does God have for my life? What plans does God have for your life? Think about that. Am I following God? Am I staying close to Him, listening to what He's saying? What's the best way to listen? Pray and be still and know that He is God. All right, you guys, I hope this week you'll think about Joseph. Think about how he remembered everything he was taught from a little boy, just like you guys, and how he followed God and he listened to God. And he trusted God in some really extreme circumstances, right? Some things that we will probably never see. But Joseph kept moving forward. It didn't mean he never made a mistake. It just meant he kept seeking God. That's what we have to do. That's what you have to do and I have to do and your parents have to do. We have to keep seeking God. We have to keep reading His Word. We have to stay close to Him in prayer and see what plans God has for you and me, just like He had these awesome plans for Joseph. So more of the story next week. It's a really good one next week. I can't wait to tell you guys. All right, I'll see you soon.